But ever so often, music will hit me just exactly right. Brief epiphanies. They're wonderful, very brief little moments. Well, dancing well is one thing. It's really working. You're dancing with the right person. And my goodness, there you are, you're Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, which I've always wanted to be, both of them. Dancing most of the time. It's with somebody other than your wife or your girlfriend. It's like trying to dock somebody else's yacht, you know.
That was Kurt Vonnegut speaking about something worth waiting for. I'm your host, Cliff Robertson, and welcome to A Circle of Friends, passages from the Common Ground book. A Circle of Friends is a project put together by Remar Sutton and Mary Abbott Waite. They asked 100 friends to answer 50 questions on subjects ranging from the profound to the whimsical. What's your first memory? Tell me about a special moment with a parent. What's something that shines? Something vile? If I say once on a rainy afternoon, what comes to mind? The circle of friends, including your host, who answer these questions, define diversity. One or two can't read, and others have written some of the best-read books in the world. Some are richer than you can count, and quite a few make those church mice seem rich. One's family rules a country, and one has spent his life on an island no bigger than a modest country farm. The unrehearsed answers of this unusual group tell us as much about what we all have in common, particularly during the holidays, as what makes us different.
Simple things that bring me pleasure? A laugh.
Taylor Plimpton, age 16, has a simple pleasure which certainly goes with the holidays, doesn't it? Writer Kurt Vonnegut and photographer Will McIntyre talk about other simple pleasures.
When I was a younger person, a martini was really very bad and very good for me. And, well, it's a depth charge. And you swallow it, and I would say maybe a second and a half, 2 seconds goes by, and then there is this ka-chung, and your body knows something has really happened.
Yeah, being in our own home and preparing our own food, sitting down and having a nice bottle of wine. Things that don't happen often because our work keeps us on the road. It's the rare things that give the most pleasure. That reminds me of something Dr. Hugh Matthews, a friend in the mountains, once said. He'd grown up in the Depression and was talking about building this beautiful house he lived in. To us now, he said, a purchase is just a purchase. But I remember the time when a purchase was a triumph. Being at home, doing nothing is a triumph for us.
Nan Thomas on Little Apple Bay in the British Virgin Islands tells you about a pleasure you might want to do without.
Yeah, well, the rats run around the kitchen, and I'm not scared of them. I don't jump up in a chair and yell and scream. I just let them run around. They run across my feet occasionally, which is a little shocking.
Singer Princess Pamela Strobel talks about another simple pleasure during the holidays, food. Years later in New York, Princess Pamela can still taste it at her grandmother's in South Carolina.
Well, all you did was eat and have a good time. It was beautiful. The aroma in the house, the pound cakes, the chocolate cakes, oh boy, cinnamon buns and wine my grandmother had made during the summer. Must have been 150 proof. And you didn't get anything until Reverend Coleman came.
Princess learned another lifelong and simple pleasure back home, and she's still doing it. Here she's with the Bobby Vidal Quartet.
Such joy and happiness you bring. Such joy and happiness, oh, you bring, just like a tree. You're a guy
Pets pop up throughout the Common Ground book. Another point of connection. Actress Stephanie Beacham talks about why she has pets around.
I always have pets around me, and really for my children, because I was able to see my dog, Smudgy, personally into the earth. I mean, human beings, when they die, are whisked out of everybody's vision. And then there's this uncomfortable 3 hours, possibly in a pair of squeaky shoes. It doesn't register to a child in the same way as it does if you are responsible to see that that is what life and that is what death is.
We learn from them, and we also simply enjoy them, don't we? Whatever the pet, wherever we find them. Writer George Plimpton.
Well, I had this cat that I think I picked up on the street. It was called Blue. Blue, I think because he was blue when I picked him up, not only in demeanor, but in a little bit. There was a blue in his color somewhere, and he became a great favorite. He was particularly fascinated by the shaving process. He would sit right there by the sink. He would hear the water running, and he would come in and he would watch me shave as if he couldn't quite believe the application of foam and then the disappearance of the foam. He was quite a character, Blue. I adored him.
But some people think we shouldn't have pets at all. Artist Jerry Preston in Florida.
You want this? Come on up here. Come on. Come on, you guys. Come get this. All right, you guys, quit that fussing. Come on. They really fuss and squabble a lot among themselves. I've been feeding probably this one family of raccoons for 15 years. Started out with their great-great-grandmother. And each mother would bring her babies up, and they would bring their babies up. So they become old friends. You know, there's a big difference in having an animal as a friend and having an animal for a pet. A big difference. It's all based on mutual respect and a little food. They're like anybody else.
You see, in the Virgin Islands there is a lot of ports, and now I got to think on some sport, but I really wouldn't want you listen to this. One of my biggest sport is when I go to fish. Now it break me a grin. Last year, you know, I caught a big blue marlin. Well, I really want you to realize it was an Alibaba's tournament, and I got me a prize. You see, I really was no peace. I got in the contest to catch and release. Oh, yeah.
That's Virgin Islander Foxy Callwood's response when we asked him about sports. During the holidays, we often trade sports stories. Photographer Denny McIntyre remembers a sweet moment of revenge.
For a while, I played halfback on an adult soccer team. It was nominally a co-ed league, but in fact the women were tolerated rather than encouraged. And this one particular game, one guy kept calling out that he was open. When I was standing right on him, I stayed with him, but he kept yelling, I'm open. Once he said it right into my face, which is kind of like denying my existence, and I finally came back at him with, the hell you are. The next time somebody passed him the ball, I gave it my last bit of oomph. I stepped in front of him, I stole the ball, I took off down the field, and left him gaping. Estrogen makes its mark.
Joy Melton Prickett's big sporting moment is, well, a typical sporting event in Sardis, Georgia.
The gun went off, and there were a whole probably 25 people in the road race and maybe another 50 people from the town that had shown up for the big occasion. To my surprise, I placed third. I later found out that I placed third because there were only 4 people in my age category, and the girl who I had talked into finishing the race with me was number 4.
Adventurer Dan Buettner's moment of glory in sports took him a few miles further than Joy's.
The biggest moment in sports for me was when I finished my very first bicycle trek from the top of North America to the bottom of South America. I dipped my rear wheels in the Arctic Ocean at Prudhoe Bay and cycled 15,536 miles through North, Central, and South America. Gotten all the way down to the island of Tierra del Fuego, and I mounted the last hill, and I could see the town of Ushuaia fanning out to the sea and the white-capped waters of the Beagle Channel. And I glided down that very last hill with my 3 teammates, and one by one we dipped our front wheels in the water and finished the trek.
Dan's trip is in the Guinness Book of Records, but not all of that trip was glorious. One moment comes back to haunt him, particularly during the holidays.
When I think of compassion, I can remember an incident in El Salvador. It was a town called San Miguel, and I had biked there. It was the end of the day, and I was straddling my bicycle, and I looked across the street where there was this garbage dump, and I saw this old woman scrounging around in the dump. At one point, she bent over and she picked up this bag of garbage. I figured she'd just drop it and move on. Instead, she lowered her head to this greasy, rotten garbage and started eating it. And I stood there in complete awe and watched her. And about halfway through, she realized that I was watching her, and she lowered the bag of garbage. She had this utter look of shame and disgust. She dropped the bag and then walked on. It's a face I remember when I sit down to Thanksgiving dinner.
Through the 1,000 answers in the Common Ground book, one theme stands out, and it's particularly appropriate at this time of the year. People want to belong, to connect with those around them. Professor Richard Duke says it best.
For several summers, when I was going to college and beginning graduate school, I was a bartender at a small resort on Lake Erie. And one of the things I remember best was how much the people who vacationed there enjoyed any little sign that they somehow were connected with the place.
Student Dave de Grand Prix has been waiting a lifetime for a very personal and special connection. He describes the search for his natural mother.
I guess I just want to kind of thank her, It was obviously out of love. Love for life and love for me, and for what she and my father created. That she gave me, because she wanted me to have more opportunity than she could give me. So I guess thank her and just kind of give her a hug and look at her, and I don't know.
Since that interview, Dave de Grand Prix and his natural mother have met. I don't know about your holidays, but during ours, someone always begins telling stories. And down south, some of those stories are unusual. Buck Johnson in Swainsboro, Georgia.
One of my funniest early memories, Mama had back trouble, and one winter night we all slept in the same room because we didn't have running electricity. And she said, "Grady, you've got to rub my back." Well, like I said, we didn't have electric light, so Daddy got up in the dark and got a bottle of liniment and rubbed Mama down. And she said, "Oh, that's the best stuff." Then she went to sleep in about 30 minutes saying, "That is the best liniment I've ever seen." When we got up the next morning, we saw Daddy had rubbed her down with old cedar furniture polish. I guess I was about 6 or 7 years old then.
I wonder if Buck Johnson still has any of that furniture polish around. If he does, Dr. Torrey Andrews may have a more traditional use for it.
A treasured possession? Well, having my grandmother's desk is nice. It sat in the corner under the window in her apartment, and she used to sit there and write. She kept every letter that was ever written to her. If I open the drawers now and stick my head in, it still smells like her stuff, talcum powder. My grandmother loved to teach. Of course, the students had to come to her because she couldn't get out. One time, a student gave her a couple of joints. She didn't want him to smoke them, so she said, "Why don't you give them to me? I'd like to try them." She treasured those joints. It never occurred to her to actually smoke them, but she kept them under glass so she could bring them out at bridge parties and shock the hell out of her friends.
Though those joints are only a funny memory for Torrey, he still has something else very special from his grandmother.
Something that shines? Well, my grandmother's date books from 1923 when she met my grandfather shine. The appointments vary at first if you look through them. John in the afternoon, Bob's party. But then there's the first reference to my grandfather, swimming with Frank. Pretty soon every page had something about Frank, and all the other names just stopped showing up.
Those date books helped Torrey make a connection with his young grandparents in the past. Bahamian Ollie Ferguson's grandparents made a 60-year connection Ollie will never forget.
With my grandparents, I think it was almost love at first sight. The thing that I found incredible about their relationship was neither one of them said, "You should do this" or "You should do that." And they both could do whatever they wanted to do, but whatever they wanted to do was be together.
Atlantan Amy Holloway wouldn't mind waiting for a relationship like that. And when she finds it, she has a very special request.
Someday I know I'll get married. And when I do, what I want is for my husband, right before I go to sleep, to tell me a joke. That would be worth waiting for.
Amy imagines a moment with someone in the future, someone she's never seen, but imagination and empathy can also connect you with someone very real. Singer Jane Burke.
When the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and Chorus toured Europe in 1988, we sang Beethoven's Ninth in what was then East Berlin. When we got to the Schauspielhaus, a beautiful building, there were guards posted at various spots around the hall to keep us from going where we weren't supposed to go. As the concert started, I looked around the hall from my place up on the top row of the chorus. I could see people's faces as the orchestra played the first three movements, and they were absorbed. Beethoven's music is so important to the German people. As we started to sing Schiller's Ode to Joy, Freude, schöne Goethe, Funken, Tochter aus Elysium. Well, I looked over, and I saw this woman sitting about 25 feet away from me, and she was sobbing. I caught her eye a few minutes later, and I had tears streaming down my face. It was very hard to finish the performance. I thought about her the day the wall came down.
Jane's moment of contact with a stranger was one of those turning points, a moment of clarity that changes how you view life. These moments are not always found in such spectacular settings. Heavyweight boxer Jerry Coonies came to him in an elevator.
I was coming downstairs for breakfast, and I got into the elevator. It was a glass elevator, and looking down, I saw a goldfish pond in the bottom. And it was an amazing thing that happened to me. That I looked at those goldfish, and I realized that was it for them. That's it. That was their life. And that I didn't want to be stuck in that goldfish pond. I wanted to get out and live life.
Jerry shuns the safe and narrow, but that safety is exactly what brings Emily Cook to an insight.
Well, I'll be curled up in bed, not really thinking about anything, just kind of watching a movie. And I'll turn over and I'll see Mims laying next to me. And I'll have just such a feeling of peace that'll come over me, that I have a husband, I have a home, we have our daughter English, we have each other and all this love. And a sense of peace will come over me at the rightness of things at that time.
But that feeling we all have when life hangs together can also fall apart without warning, as John Emmerling discovered many years ago.
This goes back to 1979. I'd been married for 10 years. My daughter Samantha was 5. My son Jonathan was 3. I had recently started my own advertising agency and was working very hard at that. My wife was becoming a successful decorating editor and had recently signed a contract to do her first book. So everything seemed to be working about our life. It was moving along smoothly. We were both working hard. We had 2 beautiful children, a beautiful apartment, 2 exciting careers. And one day my wife walked in, and she simply announced, with no previous discussion, "I want a divorce." Probably my lowest moment. Of course, at that time, I didn't know that Kate was around the bend.
Faith in someone can be a dangerous thing. Some learn this earlier than others. Again, Jane Burke.
I had a crush on Ricky Bell in the 2nd grade. I kissed him in line one day, an innocent little kiss on the cheek, and got in trouble. He told me one day that if I'd let him borrow my eraser, he'd marry me. Another day, he told me if I lost 5 pounds, he'd marry me. He lied both times.
Grandfathers, on the other hand, are made of more dependable stuff. Advertising executive John Emmerling.
I remember it was VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, and the war was over. Everybody was excited. There were big celebrations. I was living in Detroit at the time, and I was at my grandparents' house, but I had the measles. The whole family trooped downtown Detroit to go see a big VE Day parade, and I had to stay home. I felt very deprived by that. But when they came back, my grandfather came in and talked to me, and then he went into his study where he kept his shotguns. He took down a shotgun and took me out into the little tiny backyard of his house in Detroit and into the alley where there was a big cement trash can. And I stood there, and he fired that shotgun, boom, right into that trash can, into the side of the cement trash can. Well, it was a very special celebration that my grandfather did just for me.
You might expect a more outrageous moment from your grandfather, but actress Doris Roberts reminds us that every once in a while they also come from a stranger.
Once on a rainy afternoon, when Bill first moved into his 50th Street apartment, I came by to help him unpack. And Bill was on the very top floor, so I rang the buzzer again and again, but no Bill, no answer. And he didn't have a phone yet, so I went across the street to look up to see if I could, try to find a way to contact him. And this great, huge fire department was across the street, 2nd largest engine in New York City, I think it was called. And you know what they did? They brought the fire engine halfway out and put on the lights and the sirens, and everyone on that street opened their windows to see where the fire was. But Bill, no, he did not. So a man next door went over and knocked on his door. "Look out your window," he said. And there I was. And he let me in. And we were married, just a few months after that. The first time I saw mortality was when I saw my mother's hands get old. The skin got very translucent and crinkly and lined, and it looked like all the juice had gone out of them.
'Cause in this world, we need our flowers and kind words to help us get along. So if you don't give me flowers while I'm living, I say, oh, then don't you come throw them when I'm gone. If you don't give me flowers while I'm living, I say, oh, then don't you come throw them when I'm gone.
We go through a lot to find the ones we care about, and then you may lose them. Artist Czar Rochelle.
Harry was the best friend I ever had in my adult life. He developed throat cancer. All his doctors said it was from Agent Orange. The cancer was gone for a while, and then it came back. Even as hard as he fought, it began to get the best of him, and he ended up living with his brother in Savannah. I went down and spent a week with him before he died, but we had a pretty good week. It wasn't too long after that I got the call that Harry was dead. The memorial service was to be in Pennsylvania, but his brother said that if I wanted to attend a service, they would have one in Savannah. But that just does nothing for me. If a friend moves away, you don't go stare at their empty house.
No, we wouldn't look for a friend in an empty house. But we might look for him or her in a crowded room of friends or strangers. A meeting place where people talk and share some common ground.
Wait a minute, I think I got just frost in there. Yeah, frost. I got frost. Nibbling on your shows. Sorry, are we talking to what? It's Christmas time. I said
Our music was recorded live at Princess Pamela's Southern Touch restaurant in New York. Reservations required. Accompanying Princess was the Bobby Vidal Quartet. Bobby Vidal on the contrabass, Tayama on the piano, Gerald Hayes on the saxophone, Al King on drums. Foxy Callwood was recorded live at Foxy's Place, Great Harbor, population 43. On the island of Jost van Dyke, no reservations, or shoes for that matter, required. Darren Wang created and produced this show for Verb Productions. This is Cliff Robertson wishing you a happy holiday season.
Now unwrap the package. Right. Shut the knife.